Hey guys, it's Michelle. Welcome back to Bible Studies with Michelle. We are going to delve into John chapter 18. It's been a while. I think it's been almost a month, but I have a new setup. I've got wireless, a router closer, so hopefully we don't lose reception. We're out on the deck. We've got the chicken chapel right behind me, and Leah's actually way out there digging up potatoes right now. So I'm really excited to bring you guys John chapter 18. So I hope you've had a lovely evening so far as the sun is setting and it's beautiful out. So I got to get started before I lose my light. Um, so if you saw the thumbnail and the title, we're going to cover Jesus being arrested. And he's arrested in a garden, which I find really fascinating, and that's why I wanted to kind of highlight that part. So without further ado, let's go right in. If you've not joined Bible Studies with Michelle before, I read out of the 1599 Geneva Bible and use the study notes. It's the Bible that our Pilgrim forefathers brought over. It's the first study Bible in English, and the same people that translated, most of the same people that translated the King James Bible did the Geneva Bible. So that'll give you a little bit of a background, but it's a very patriotic, near and dear Bible to me. So I hope you guys can glean from the study notes like I do, because these men knew their stuff. They absolutely knew their stuff as they were translating this sacred word. So as I go along, what I do when I read these chapters before I bring them to you guys is I just write things that stand out to me and I give them to you. And so it's just kind of like, hey, have you ever noticed this before, kind of thing. So all right, so this is John chapter 18, verse 1. When Jesus had spoken these things, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Kidron, where was a garden, into which he entered, and his disciples. I wrote down, into a garden to redeem the sin that entered the world in a garden, going all the way back to Adam. So the study note there says, Christ goes of his own accord into a garden, which his betrayer knew to be taken, that by his obedience he might take away the sin that entered into the world by one man's rebellion, and that in a garden. I love that. I absolutely love that. Verse 2. And Judas, which betrayed him, knew also the place, for Jesus often resorted thither or there with his disciples. I said he often took his disciples into a garden with God's creation and life. And it reminds me of a while back, Tim Pool had done a video in which he said, I got to get out of this box, this, internet space. I need to get back to creation, back to, God's beauty that he ordained for us. And I just think that it's amazing that I think within all of us, we know that in order to be, we have a sign in our living room, and we had some guests over last night, and one of them read it out loud, and it says, no one is nearer to God than God. No one is ever nearer to God than in a garden. And I think that that's really true. But we all know to get back to God is to get back to the garden. And that's why I love that song that we just sang there's one of my honeybees. On Sunday, Crowder's Back to the Garden. I just love that song. You can listen to that like on replay. Verse 3. Judas then, after he had received a band of men and officers of the high priests and of the Pharisees, came thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. I said, he must have set it up and made arrangements. This was planned. This was absolutely planned. But what I find hilarious about it, my flower is moving like Big Bird. It kind of looks like Big Bird, doesn't it? I find this amazing that they came here, and you'll see this. Jesus said, was I not preaching? You could have come and got me at any time, and here you come out. We're going to get to that with swords and weapons. And it's like, are you serious? They knew this guy was a peacekeeper. The fact that they came out with torches and weapons and all of that is absolutely ridiculous. Verse 4. Then Jesus, knowing all things that should come unto him, went forth and said unto them, Whom seek ye? Who you looking for? Anybody I know? I mean, seriously. I think that sometimes, if you were the master of all creation and you had created and spoken into being all of these beings, you might have a little fun with them, even in the midst of all the heaviness. I'm kind of sounding like John Eldridge here. Whom seek ye? Who you looking for? I think that sometimes Jesus was just kind of taking the time to have his own little personal enjoyment out of he knows exactly what's coming. And hey, who you looking for? They knew that he knew that they knew that he knew that he knew that they knew. Did you follow that? Let's see, did I write anything? Oh, I said, all right, let's do some cross references here. So I said, let's go back to Matthew 26:47. I didn't put bookmarkers in here or anything like that, so you're just going to have to wait until I get there. And you guys, if you have your Bibles, are following along and turning as well to Matthew 26:47. All right. So remember, the Gospels repeat the entire story, obviously with some variations, but by and large, it's the same thing. So here we are in Matthew, and it says, And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the high priests and the elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that is he, laid hold on him. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, God save thee, Master, and kissed him. It's very, very interesting that he says, God save thee. It's just lip service at that point. Either that or prophetic, or I don't know. God save thee, Master, and then he kissed them. All right, so let's go to Mark 14:32. Again, if you're following along. After they came into a place named Gethsemane, then he said to his disciples, Sit ye here till I have prayed. And he took with him Peter and James and John, and he began to be troubled and in great heaviness. And he said unto them, My soul is very heavy, even unto the death. Tarry here and watch. So he went forward a little and fell down on the ground and prayed that, if it were possible, that hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not that I will, but that thou wilt be done. Then he came and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldest thou not watch 1 hour? Watch ye and pray that ye enter not into temptation. And the spirit indeed is ready, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away to pray, and he spake the same words, and he returned and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, neither knew they what they should answer him. And he came the third time, and said unto them, Sleep henceforth, and take your rest. It is enough. The hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is delivered unto the hand of sinners. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrays me is at hand. And immediately while he yet spake, Judas, that was the one of the 12, and with him a great multitude of swords and staves from the high priests and scribes and elders. And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, is he, take him away. And he came and said, Master, hail, Master, and he kissed them. So I wrote down there, Jesus gets them ready because he knows that they are coming hence. So here Jesus is praying in the garden and asking God, if you can take this away from me, please, this is horrible, but not what I will, what you will. He knew what the Father's will was, and he knew that this is what was going to happen. He even knew that these people were coming after him. So much so, he literally tells Simon, get up, let's go. They're coming. They are come. My hour has come. He knew. It's so amazing to me. And so then it goes back to what John says in verse 4 here. Then Jesus, knowing all things that should come unto him. That's the proof. the proof is in that Jesus said to these guys, hey, here they come. And then we see the exact same thing in Luke 22:47. And while he yet spake, behold, a company, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and came near and kissed them. But it's actually verse 46 that says, and he said unto them, why sleep ye? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. So let's go back to verse 5. They answered him. So remember, Jesus asked, not me, not they, Jesus. Jesus just said, who you looking for? You looking for somebody special? Only the Son of God. And it says, they answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus said unto them, I am he. Now, the reason why I went back to those other gospels is because you have to kind of take the entire story as a whole. And Jesus says, who are you looking for? They say, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. But Judas had just said to them, I'm going to go and kiss this guy, and the guy that I kiss is the one that we're looking for. So that's why I wanted to point out just how fascinating this exchange is with all of these kind of backroom conversations where everybody kind of knows what's going on, but the lip service is all for show. I said, interesting that we see John's different account here. Jesus asked so that he could say, I am, with power. And I love that. So in verse 5, they said, or they answered him, Jesus of Nazareth, and Jesus said unto them, I am he. Now Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. Verse 6. As soon then as he had said unto them, I am he, they went away backwards and fell to the ground. Boom. Going down. Now, if you've never been to a Pentecostal church, okay, you may not have experienced watching people get slain in the spirit. I grew up in Pentecostal churches. I have experienced this, not personally, but I have experienced witnessing all of this. I don't exactly have any biblical backing and support for this. So I'm not saying that I am a supporter of that happening, but because I grew up with it, I'm allowed to joke about it. It's kind of like when, you're poor, you're allowed to joke about your poor family. But yeah, so the preacher comes and he will lay his hand on you and he's pushing you because you got to line these people up and he's like pushing you, like, you got to go down. And like me, I'm not falling on this floor unless this is for real. So then, like, he's pushing you down, like, this is violence, I think. Somehow he's going to push you, and sometimes he'll hold you with a finger like this, and you're just kind of like rhinocerosing this whole thing, like, I ain't going down unless the Spirit of God falls on me. Okay, so John is one of the only gospel accounts where these people go down, all right? So there is a precedence for the power of God being so strong, boom, people go down. Down they go. Granted, they were coming for nefarious means. So I'm not exactly sure that this is something we should be supporting in the Pentecostal churches where people, I'm not picking on them, I grew up in, listen, whatever y'all, run around, do your thing, okay? But I'm just saying, this is the only biblical precedence that I have, and these people weren't coming for right reasons. You know what I'm saying? And so, but the power, imagine, all right, I don't want to take away from the power of what Jesus did there. He says, I am he. It was enough in that moment for Jesus to say, I am he, and boom, hit the floor like a pancake. Thank you. Maia says it was the bad guys that fell, not the disciples. The power of God didn't fall on the disciples, and they all went down. Now, did they? So that's my 2 cents for the day. But think about that power. Think about it. I am he, and boom, down they go. Hit the pavement. It wasn't pavement. They hit dirt. They were in a garden. Amazing. All right, so verse 7. Then he asked them again, whom seek ye? Can we go back to the comedic amazingness of this whole thing? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Who y'all looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. Boom. They passed out. And Jesus I'm going to stand up here. Just stand over him like, who you looking for? So great. So literally one of the most epic parts of the entire Bible of Jesus doing anything ever. Who are you looking for? Looking for me? So, and they said, were they still on the ground at this point when they said, Jesus of Nazareth? I mean, really? All right. I said they must have gotten up, which is hilarious and shows that they never could have taken him if he didn't allow it. Here they come with swords and staves and fire. And all Jesus has to do is say, I am he, and boom, they lose. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't wet themselves. Seriously. I mean, boom, they're done. It's over. Okay? Verse 8. Jesus answered, I said unto you that I am he, and therefore if you seek me, let these go their way. So he's like, I already done told you, I'm the guy, you're the one that fell over. Okay, he didn't say that, but doesn't that tone sound like he would have said that? Like, I'm the guy, I already told you, and you can't even keep your legs standing up. Okay, but if I'm the guy that you seek, then let these people go. Let's see. I said he repeats himself, but makes a point that he has done so, and he protects his own. So the study note there says, Christ doth not neglect the office of a good pastor, no, not in his greatest danger. He still is the shepherd looking after his sheep. What? In the moment of his greatest danger, which again, they couldn't take his life unless he laid it down. He's still looking after his disciples. Like, just don't touch my boys. Take me, whatever. Verse 9. This was that the word might be fulfilled which he spake, of them which thou gavest me, I have lost none. Verse 10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, I wish I had brought a prop, right? This is my straw, okay? This is my prop. So Peter grabs his sword. What does he do? He drew it and he smote the ear of the high priest servant. I think it was a servant. Yeah, high priest servant, and cut off, his right ear. This is my right ear. Now, the servant's name was Malchus. Malchus. Sorry, buddy. That was the noops. Peter didn't mean it. Well, he did, but God fixed it. Okay, so Peter draws a sword, cuts off the servant's ear, like, blood. I'm sure it was squirting for miles. So here goes the ear, okay? And then Jesus says unto Peter, put up thy sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father hath given me? And poor Peter, and we've talked about Peter like this on our Bible studies, where it's like Peter didn't quite get it. He did after, and he was the rock upon which Jesus built his church. So I think we really should cut Peter some slack, don't you? All right. Then the band and the captain and the officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him. I said in verse 11, he's telling Peter, this is God's will, not the devil. We should fight the devil, but sometimes things are done for the glory of God. So yes, we should always fight the devil, but sometimes things are done just for God's glory. And that's what Jesus was trying to say. You have to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, to be able to separate the two. So Jesus lets them take him away. Verse 12. What did I say? Still funny that they bound him when his words caused them to fall to the ground moments before. It is kind of funny. You have to admit, it's really actually quite funny. They go ahead and they tie him up. So obviously not only did they come with swords and staves and fire and ropes because they bound him, your guy cuts off that guy's ear, okay? Jesus heals the guy's ear, which that's not in this version, apparently. I thought it was, but it's not. But he does. He picks up the guy's ear. Let's not have anybody traumatized here. Jesus takes the ear, puts it back on, boom, ear's back. But so they had ropes, and they still bound him up after the fact that my guy got a sword, man, and he got you fast. Peter's fast, wasn't he? He got the first blow. Okay. Verse 13, and led him away to Annas first, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas. which was the high priest that same year. And Caiaphas was he that gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Now, we are going to go to that cross-reference, even though I didn't highlight, because I want you guys to remember that. Let's hope this is the right one. John 11:50. Do you remember when we talked about that? He prophesied. Now, he wasn't really prophesying at all. He didn't think that he was saying that. See, I got to tell you. Okay, here we go. Okay, so, I'm in John 11:48. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and the nation. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye perceive nothing at all, nor yet do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man die for the people, that the whole nation perish not. This he spake not of himself, but being high priest that same year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that he should gather together in one the children of God which were scattered. And from that day forth, they counseled together to put him to death. But he was thinking, what he was saying is, if we kill this guy, then we'll save the nation from a false prophet. But prophetically, he was saying, if we kill this guy, he will save the world. And I think that that's really, really beautiful. So, verse 15. Now Simon Peter followed Jesus and another disciple, and that disciple was known of the high priest. Therefore, he went in with Jesus into the hall of the high priest. This is where it pays to know somebody. Okay? He got to go in because he knew the high priest. But Peter stood at the door without, then went out with the other disciples, which was known unto the high priest, and spake to her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. So then he gets to bring in Peter, okay, because he knows the high priest. And so Peter knows the guy that knows the high priest. Then said the maid that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also one of this man's disciples? And he said, I am not. And the servants and officers stood there, which had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and Peter also stood among them and warmed himself. Okay, so I said, very interesting exchange here. They call in Peter, and on his way in, he lies. But if he was being called in, he had to know that they knew he lied to a girl. What would be the need? Obviously, they had to know that Peter was with Jesus. He was allowed to go in. So there was no reason to lie except for an intense fear, like irrational almost. Not irrational. I mean, yeah, they could have killed him too. So it wasn't irrational, but given everything that Jesus said, given who we know Peter to have been sanctified and anointed to be, I think I would say if I was Peter, it was a momentary lapse of sanity. And Jesus prophesied that Peter would do this 3 times. And then for verse 18, where it says, and the servants and officers stood there, which had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and Peter also stood among them and warmed himself. And I said, it reminds me of the censorship. It kind of does. Because you're afraid to, touch the like, I feel like maybe partially the reason, Nigel doesn't side with Tommy is because he doesn't want to be ousted yet. And we find a lot of times that so many people have turned their backs on Alex Jones because, like, he's been shunned, and we don't want what has happened to Alex to happen to us or worse. And so we're afraid to put out the videos. We're afraid to befriend him. I see Candace Owens, and she kind of got her start, not really her start, but she did take advantage, and I think got a good portion of her fame by going to InfoWars, and then she kind of dropped some. But I love her, and she's great. But I get it. I understand why she has done that. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it nefariously wrong either. I think just, every man for himself. And that's what Peter was doing here. So that's why I said it reminds me of the censorship. Verse 19. The high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. So he was being asked about the disciples. So Peter had a reason to sort of fear there. And Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, whither the Jews resort continually, and in secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me what I said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. I didn't say anything in secret. I was there. These high priests, all y'all people be coming in here all the time. I'm not hiding away in some cliff or rock or whatever. I mean, yeah, sometimes Jesus did retreat and then thousands followed him, but he wasn't doing or saying anything in secret to be worthy of like sedition, or, he's trying to overthrow what they were fearing. Wasn't happening at all. It was pure lies. Let's see, what did I write down? I wonder why Jesus asked him why they were asking him. Could it be that you can take the word of multiple witnesses, that you should do so? That's interesting. So let's read that again. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me what I said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. And that is really fascinating to stop and go, why did Jesus ask? Why are you asking me? Go ask all of these people. I think that you should take it goes back to several times in the Old Testament, which is where we get our laws here in the United States, that you should only convict somebody or put somebody to death on the mouth of two witnesses. You can't do it on the mouth of one witness. So here Jesus is calling on an almost Torah-type law where it says, if you want to know what I said, ask the people. Don't ask me. You can't take my word for it anyway. I'm just one guy. Ask everybody else. I didn't say anything in secret. Verse 22. When he had spoken these things, one of the officers which stood by smote Jesus with his rod, saying, Answerest thou the high priest so? I think he might have some violence issues or was possessed by the devil. I said, he's not even found guilty yet, and they take liberty to beat him. This shows the violence that they had in their heart towards God himself. Verse 23. Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if I have spoken well, why smitest thou me? Pretty much saying, do you have, proof? And I wrote down, Jesus asks him to justify why he just hit him. And that's a really powerful moment, I think, for Jesus to do that. Like, if I have said something evil, then tell me. But if I have spoken aright, then why are you hitting me? And the answer is, I believe, because he's possessed by the devil. Verse 24, now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. And soon, and Simon Peter stood out and warmed himself, and they said unto him, Art not thou also of his disciples? And he denied it and said, I am not. The study note there says, after that men have fallen once, they cannot only not lift themselves by their own strength, but also they fall more and more into worse until they be raised up again by a new virtue of God. And I think we've all been there, from the smallest sin to the greatest. Once you've done it once, your inhibitions are completely gone and you can do it again. So here Peter already lied once about his affiliation with Jesus and then easily does so again. But I like how that study note there says, until they be raised up again by a new virtue of God. I said, this was compulsion. He had to know the people had seen him. All right. Verse 26. One of the servants of the high priest, his cousin, whose ear Peter smote off, said, Did not I see thee in the garden with him? And I just said, cousin, what was this, a family affair? So the high priest has a servant, and the servant's cousin is there too. Was it this like a family reunion for arresting Jesus or something? And so the guy's like, dude, I saw you because I know because you cut off my cousin's ear. I know you were the guy. Literally, I mean, this is a big deal. So we read these stories and they just seem like words on a page. This legit happened. Imagine, I want you to just for 1 second put yourself into the character of the guy whose ear got cut off's cousin. Okay? You're there. Your cousin gets his ear cut off while y'all people are trying to arrest Jesus and their swords. I don't even think you understand exactly what is going on. You're just kind of like a hired mob. Okay? The high priest's servant's cousin. And then you're like, you cut off my cousin's ear. Didn't I see you? Maia says it's kind of like the mafia. Exactly. All right. Verse 27. Peter then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. Now, I'm going to repeat that in a second, but back to verse 26. It says, did I not see thee in the garden with him? This was, so when I think, maybe you guys are in the same boat as me. When I think of the Middle East, when I think of Jerusalem, when I think of these places, I think of like arid land, right? But this garden was a big deal that everybody knew, hey, we were in the garden. That garden, it must have been lush with plant life. It's where Jesus wanted to retreat, where life was growing. Was it a vegetable garden? Was it a flower garden? Was it both? Probably. Didn't I see you in the garden? There we are, back to the garden again. So, then Peter denied again, and immediately the cock crowed. Hey, rooster, could we get a sound effect here? I need the rooster for a sound effect. It's a little late in the evening. Every once in a while, we need like somebody to pull in the driveway. He's kind of like a dog. So he pulls in the driveway and bark, bark, bark. He does his cock-a-doodle-doo. It actually doesn't sound like that. It's kind of like that. So immediately the cock crows. Then now when I first started doing these Bible studies, we were in Luke. And it was kind of, I think we started, I can't remember exactly. You can go back and look. Luke 22 or something. But we ended, obviously, Luke, with one of the most powerful moments I remember from doing our Bible studies was talking about that. And I'm trying to see if there's where my cross reference is. But you know what? I don't need a cross reference. I can just tell you. Jesus looks back at Peter in that moment. They're close enough. So imagine, this is a small area, right? Where this discussion is happening between the questioning and Jesus, and Peter warming himself by the fire, and so Peter was close enough to Jesus that Jesus probably didn't hear the conversation, but because he knows all things, like we just heard from John, they meet eye contact. Because Jesus had told him. Peter says, not Father, but he says, Master, I'll go with you unto death. And God says, Jesus says, that's great, but I'm going to tell you, before the cock crows twice, you will have denied me 3 times. Jesus tells this to him in the moment of Jesus's dire hour, so much so that Peter is denying his affiliation with his best friend, who he has seen miracles that you and I can't even fathom. He denies this guy. And then Jesus meets eyes with Peter. And it's this beautiful moment because Jesus had already told Peter, it's okay. It's okay. I love you anyway. Okay? So if you've ever had a moment like that where you're totally in the wrong, remember, you can lock eyes with Jesus and have that moment of repentance. All right, so. Oh, I did already have it written down. Isn't that so funny? Luke 22:60. And I knew I wanted to go back to that. Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew. Then the Lord turned back and looked upon Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. Have you ever wept bitterly? Snot comes out of your nose. You can't breathe. That is called weeping bitterly. Peter went out and wept bitterly. I can almost guarantee any sin that you have ever committed is not equal to what Peter felt in that moment. That is real. And then the compassion and love that Jesus shows him anyway. Verse 28. Then led they Jesus from Caiaphas into the common hall. Now it was morning, and they themselves went not into the common hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Worried about their bellies. I can't defile myself because I got to be able to eat that yummy Passover meal. So, okay. Verse 29. Pilate then went out unto them and said, What accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him unto thee. So pretty much our bringing him here confirms his guilt. Because if he wasn't guilty, we wouldn't have brought him to you. They didn't actually answer the question. He literally says, Pilate says, what did he do? Like, what accusation do you have to bring against him? Well, we're not going to tell you exactly. This is like watching the left on CNN or a question. Whenever anybody asks the left a question, they circle around it. I can't answer that question. I'm not going to answer that question. But what I am going to tell you is that he was guilty, and that's why we brought him to you. And we would not have brought him to you if he was not guilty. And that is all you need to know. You don't need to know the accusations that we are bringing against him. You just need to know that we've already confirmed his guilt, and now we want you to kill him. Okay? All right, verse 31. Oh, excuse me. Verse 31. Then Pilate said unto them, Take ye him, and judge him after your own law. Then the Jews said unto him, It's not lawful for us to put any man to death. So, yeah, we would have done it, but, like, legally we can, because it's not lawful for us to kill anybody, and we've already decided he should hang. Like, that's it. So that's why we kind of need you on a technicality purposes, because we need you to drop the hammer for us, okay? I wrote down they were seeking only death, no other punishment. The study note there says, for judgments of life and death were taken from them 40 years before the destruction of the temple. They literally had no legality purposes to kill somebody. So here Pilate is like, Pilate knew that, right? So he would not have said, hey, go judge the guy yourself if he had thought they just wanted to kill him, because they couldn't have judged. It was taken away from them 40 years prior. Do you understand? So Pilate's like, just go judge the guy yourself. I don't care. But we want to kill him. And so that's why we need you. Okay. So, it was that the word of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. Verse 33. So Pilate entered into the common hall again, and called Jesus, and said unto him, Art thou the king of the Jews? Verse 34. Jesus answered him, saying, Sayest thou that of thyself, or did others tell it thee of me? And I just wrote down, it's really interesting that Jesus asks this. Did others tell you to ask that, or are you asking it because you think I'm the king of the Jews? Verse 35, Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the high priest have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? They wouldn't even tell you what he did, and you're asking Jesus to tell you what he did? And Jesus answered, let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing any of my notes here. Yeah. And Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would surely fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate then said unto him, Art thou a king then? He's kind of suspicious here. What's going on? And Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. For this cause am I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Every one that is of the truth hears my voice. Imagine that stance, to say to Pilate, like, essentially, if you're not hearing me, you are, you're not of truth. You're not hearing my voice. Let's see, what did I write down? Um, Pilate says he is, and then says it to the crowd in verse 39. So here, when Jesus says, you said that I'm a king, because he says, thou sayest that I am a king. Jesus literally just said, you just said I'm a king. You just said it. Verse 38. Pilate said unto him, what is truth? Here we are talking philosophical between Jesus and Pilate. And when he had said that, he went out again unto the Jews, and said unto them, I find in him no cause at all. But you have a custom that I should deliver you one loose at the Passover. Will ye then that I loose unto you the King of the Jews? And they cried, they all again, saying, not him, but Barabbas. Now, this Barabbas was a murderer. In verse 40, when it says they cried, then cried they all again, it says word for word. The word for word translation there is made a great and foul voice. So verse 40 is the end of chapter 18, but I want to back up a couple of verses because we're going to stop here. So when Pilate says to him, what is truth? I think that within him, he is kind of having this argument within himself. Because you have to remember, I think it was Pilate. Somebody in the chat can correct me. Leah, wasn't it Pilate whose wife had the dreams? Yeah, I think it was Pilate's wife who had the dreams, like saying, listen, she came out like, don't have anything to do with this man. Do not crucify him. Or not, she doesn't say that, but don't kill him. Don't have it. Just put this on somebody else. Do not. She was having nightmares. I mean, this woman was apoplectic, upset. Okay. So I think that within that, I've got a candle out here for bugs, so I'm bringing it because I'm losing my light. I think I almost envision him, and I wish I could stand up because my camera won't go up, but I just kind of envision him like, what is truth? And he goes back out and he's like, listen, I don't find any fault with this guy. He doesn't want to put him to death. He realizes that they are asking to have him put to death. That's their request. He knows, because otherwise they would have judged him themselves. The only thing they couldn't do themselves was put him to death. That was taken away from them. Okay? So then Pilate says, but you have a custom that I should deliver you one loose at the Passover. He really is trying to get out of this. He really wants to let this guy go. He wants to let Jesus go. His wife is having nightmares. Maia says, yes, it was Pilate's wife. Thank you. I don't have anything to do with this guy. Just listen. You got a custom. I will release this guy to you at Passover. It's Passover. Let's just be done, okay? That's how I would feel. That's, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Just let this guy go. And they cried again. Now remember, it says word for word, they made a great and foul voice. Not him, but Barabbas. Barabbas was a murderer. So, we're going to, this is like a to be continued, and I hope that it won't be 3 or 4 weeks, because now that I have my setup, I think it should be easier. And I know I say that every time, but I really mean it. But I can't really leave you guys hanging there in John 19, because this is an incredible story, and it's not just a story. It really, really happened, and it's beautiful how it all plays out so perfectly, and every word that Jesus speaks is perfect, and that's why I like to go over it bit by bit by bit, because after John, we're going to move into Acts, and it's going to be very interesting to shift from the words of Jesus to the acts of the disciples, and that's going to be really fun. I'm excited about that. So thank you guys for joining me by candlelight. Oh, that's really creepy on my face. For John chapter 18 in the garden. This is our garden here at sunset. Let me see if I can move this around, and there's Leah out there working hard. But I'm glad that you guys were able to when do we get to Revelation? Oh my gosh, we would have to be doing Resistance Chicks for a really long time, as slow as I get at this, for us to get to Revelation. And I'm not skipping ahead to Revelation, and I'm going to tell you why. Because they say you should write what you should know. You should YouTube what you should know. And as far as Revelation goes, I think out of all the books in the Bible, it is the most controversial. So I could give you the way that I interpret it and the way that I receive it. But what I try to do here at Resistance Chicks and at Michelle's Bible Studies is to just give you the facts. Exactly the way that it happened, and exactly the way that it is, exactly the way that all Christendom interprets scripture. Okay? Um, and so, yes, Redneck, it is the most interesting. It is very fascinating, and I believe that every generation lives out, every person lives out the book of Revelation. That's why it's there. It's not just a book for the end times. Yes, it does prophesy the end of days, but it the pilgrims took it as something that they could apply to their daily lives, and that's why you have to get in it to get a deep understanding. The book of Job is also another book that is very difficult to understand, but when you can grasp it, it's life changing, and again, also applicable to everyone's life. So, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that I got to do this. It's really lifted my spirits, and I hope that it's lifted yours. I love you guys. Remember, God loves you. It's not just a conspiracy theory. If this thing really went down exactly the way the Bible tells us that it did, and we have the four Gospels to testify to it. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday evening, and we will see you back on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our weekly roundup of the news. I will give you, guess what? So yesterday we had Horatio on. If you didn't watch that, you need to. My mom went and she put a second cut together where she edited out the issues that we were having. So we're talking to Horatio about what's going on in the UK. John Burkow, the Speaker of the House, has said today that he is going to step down on the 31st of October. So Lee and I are a little bit disappointed because even though he is kind of a jerk, um, he's funny. And like Horatio pointed out in a message to me today, they're going to just replace him with somebody else that's not awesome because it's going to happen before. The reason why he's stepping down, and I'll tell you exactly, um, is because they're going to have a general election. And they want to replace the Speaker of the House before the general election so that they can put in one of their guys. So I'm going to miss him. He's kind of funny. Order. All right, you guys. Good night. God bless.